the Chief Brand Officer of Domino's, a former summer intern at Procter & Gamble, Kate Trumbull. Please welcome Kate to Signal.
Thanks for having me. All right.
Thank you so much for coming. I want to start with this sort of great story. We told it at the speaker dinner last night. I was unaware, and my partner, Stan Houston, told me this story, which is that since 2008, which was kind of the beginning of a turnaround we're going to talk about at Domino's, had you invested, we'll ask the audience, let's just say $100 in Domino's stock, or 2008, $100 in Google, which one would have left you with a bigger 401k? Oh, of course you all know it's Domino's. But you wouldn't have known that had I not set that up. And my question to you is, how did Domino's outperform the tech sector? Like, what is that?
It is crazy.
You could have called me.
I know. A lot of my family and friends were like, could you have given me a heads up?
Right.
The stock price was $2.83, and now it's, I think I checked this morning, $4.89. So It has been a remarkable journey. And I would say to you, John and Mark talked about it this morning. Obviously, it comes down to more sales, more profits, more stores at the highest level. But I think what mattered most internally was the mindset and the spirit of the culture. And the culture at that time was we needed to benchmark ourselves outside our category. If you're thinking about, okay, your Domino's Pizza, there's a couple of major national players, there's regional brands, there's independents. If you're thinking about how do I win on the value equation of product, service, value against those players, it's not gonna push you to do really remarkable things that step change your growth. Instead, we decided to benchmark ourselves outside the category with the tech players, back in 2010. So it was Amazon, it was Facebook at the time. We really, really wanted to think bigger than any other pizza, QSR, food, CPG brand would think. And that made all the difference. And then there's all the things, when we're a franchise business, if your franchisees are profitable, they're gonna build more stores. And so we're in over 90 countries, and that was a huge priority. But at the end of the day, when you start to think outside your category and look to disrupt yourself, it leads to innovation both in food and technology that just we would never have even dreamed about or invested in if we weren't looking that far into the future.
I think it's really good advice to think outside your category. I remember the campaign that I believe was pretty associated with your turnaround, and we just heard Candace talk about a turnaround at CBG. But as I recall, this campaign basically started with, "We know our product's not very good."
Yep.
I mean, you paid money to say that on national television. That's a stupendous risk to do that. Can you tell us the thinking behind that? How did that come about?
Yeah, and I would say to your first question, none of that would have mattered if we didn't have a superior product. You guys talk about superiority and focus so much on having the best product. You have to have that first. And that's a lot of what this was. At the time, right, 2008, 2009, there was no trust. The banks were failing. People felt like they couldn't believe anything in government. There was no truth. And so that was the moment that us having radical, uncommon honesty in that moment broke through in a major way and connected to consumers. And we looked to resolve the tension. So it wasn't about just admitting, gosh, we said our pizza tastes like cardboard. It's about we did all the work to come back and say, give us a try because we now have the best pizza. And it was, talk about scary. We have, over 800 franchisees. This is their whole life.
And don't you have to get them to approve something like this?
Yes, it's my favorite part of my job.
Tense meetings.
I know. I love our franchisees, and They make our work better, but it is one of those things. You have an advisory board for marketing, and so it was intense. But not all the franchisees know when you're going to do something like that, and it was really scary times. But you know, necessity is the mother of invention. Like we were in a bad place with the stock at 283. Our product wasn't good. We were failing, and so it was time to take a risk. And the beauty of taking a risk like that, and we heard a little bit earlier about authenticity, that radical, uncommon honesty and transparency opened the floodgates to doing more things like that. Right. So then suddenly we're on Times Square showing our reviews, both bad and good. Then we were live streaming from a store in Salt Lake City for 30 days without touching the video, which, let me tell you, is really scary. You know, knowing all the things that could go wrong that could hurt a food business. But it created this energy and culture that we wanted to, you know, take risk and lean in and be honest about where we weren't good. And so I think everyone says we want to be authentic and we're willing to take risk and we're willing to say the truth. But you have to have a mindset that you're willing to really uncover all the bad stuff about your business, and you're ready to confront that, but then you're ready to do something about it. So it was powerful. And even just when you think about, soon after that, we came out and said, and we were living up to keeping our word, we would only shoot product that we were willing to eat. So we weren't doing glue, we weren't doing staples when every other food brand was doing that. And that just built trust with consumers. And like I said, that red thread of transparency continued on in a lot of things we do.
Now, when you talk about market growth, you told me earlier this story of how Domino's essentially at the national scale or international scale kind of became pizza delivery, right? Mm-hmm. That, you know, a guarantee of a certain amount of time, like it equates with delivery of pizza. But then you started a carryout business based in the franchise. Mm-hmm. And that is now larger than your delivery pizza business. How? Like, what was that risk that you took to decide, well, no, actually, and what insights did you have that drove well, no, maybe the consumer wants to come and pick this up as opposed to having it delivered to their home?
Well, so we were founded in 1960 and basically invented food delivery. There was no such thing as getting food delivered. I know it's hard to imagine with how many options you have today.
You've managed to predate even me.
There you go. and you know, all the innovation was around delivery, right? The car topper we invented, heat wave bags, we are associated with a 30-minute guarantee, all those things. And so, you know, fast forward, and that was our core, that's our DNA. And we started, though, this conference is called Signal. We saw a little signal. We were getting some carryout business organically. And, you know, you start to look at it and you ask yourself, why are people coming to these stores? A lot of our stores weren't in A locations because we were a delivery company and you never knew where your store was. You didn't have to have premium rent because it just showed up, you know? And so we started digging into it. And we saw an opportunity. We started doing some testing. And what was fascinating, and you talk about how do you take a mature brand or a mature category and step change growth, we noticed that these were completely different customers. They were completely incremental. And so then it's about convincing for us, there's the core consumer, but there's our customer, the franchisee, that this was incremental and it wasn't going to steal from their other business. We also saw this consumer was value conscious. So another thing I think is really helpful when you're trying to step change growth and bring all your stakeholders along is just that ability to test something and prove it fast. So we came up with this week-long carryout idea, right? It's a $7.99 large 3-topping pizzas, amazing deal, but we'll just run it Monday through Wednesday when they're not that busy, not our core hours, and see, or day parts, and see how does it do. Well, it did phenomenal. And we were able to show the data. These are people you didn't see before. These are actually people that maybe would have ordered from McDonald's or Burger King. Okay, so then the heads were nodding, and then we were able to invest in a bigger way into that business, and then it became all the innovation that we've applied to delivery, you know, and that mindset we could apply to carryout.
Yeah. I want to actually ask you about a couple of your campaigns Because I would say that your history of running campaigns that are both memorable, significant, impactful, is pretty unparalleled. But and there's so many we could go over, but I want, and they're somewhat risky also. I want to ask you about two, paving for pizza and the emergency pizza. Tell me about those two.
All right, so paving for pizza. We went to our agency and we said, we need something that's going to step change carryout. We want to start innovating and talking about carryout and having a whole linear layer around it. And so they said, fine, but we need to understand more about this consumer. So I'm going to do a quick exercise here. Raise your hand, and then if you're in the chat, maybe throw it out there. If you're going to do pizza, are you more of a carryout person? Who's a carryout person? All right, kind of, okay, and then hands down, what about delivery? You're almost always going to do delivery. All right, so your spouses or family can probably tell you this. If you raise your hand for carryout, you are very into control. Does that feel right? You like to be in the weeds, you know, making sure everything is perfect. You're checking that pizza. You're making sure it's hot. You get frustrated if the traffic is bad. And then if you're a delivery customer, you're into freedom, right? You're like, someone else do the work. I'm just going to sit back, maybe get some other things done. So it's a really different mindset. And so we broke open this consumer insight and truth, and then the ideas started flowing. So what our agency came to us with was, okay, we know this carryout consumer. They're thinking about every single thing. And frankly, one of their arch nemesis are bad roads, okay? Because if you have a bad road or you have traffic or a pothole, that can get in the way of your perfectly timed, perfectly kind of engineered carryout experience. And so that's where that idea was born. And it was out there. It wasn't something that you would have ever thought of, and I think that's why it broke through. But the work to actually talk with local municipalities.
And just to be clear, you tied paving roads and working with towns to fix potholes
100%
to buying pizza.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Oh, it worked beautifully, but it was really a real tension and a real insight. And it's also just the tension for the consumer of how much everyone hates potholes. They're like the worst thing, and everyone feels like no one does anything about it. It's going back to that, no one's doing anything about it. Domino's, we actually do something and we take action. And so we really did. We worked with all these local municipalities. We started investing the money. It was kind of crazy to learn all about that, but they wanted the investment. We went ahead. Filming the ad was so fun, I have to tell you. Trying to have the pizza, you show when you hit a pothole what happens. I have very vivid memories of that. But once we did it, it blew up. The earned media was crazy. No one saw it coming. And we had to, you have to kind of walk that line of you never want to be political. We're not trying to be political or the government. We just love pizza so much. We're willing to do anything to prove it and to make sure you get a hot, delicious, perfect pizza, because bad roads shouldn't happen to good pizza, right? So we expanded it. It blew up. We expanded it to 50 states. We let people enter to get their street and their town roads paved. Bernie Sanders tweeted about it. It was wild. And then last winter, we did a similar campaign for plowing for pizza. Because that's a real thing too. Cold roads shouldn't get in the way of hot pizza. So lot of fun with that campaign, but I think it just shows our obsession with hot, delicious pizza and wanting to really resolve the tension that we see in that unique consumer.
And then the emergency pizza campaign, which I think was, pretty risky in a way, from a business standpoint. Hey, by the way, we're just going to tell everybody they can have a free pizza.
Yeah, it was. I would tell you guys, P&G has so many frameworks, right? So the value equation of product, service, image, we've been always trying to innovate around product and service and image, and we never really thought about innovating around value. And so our new strategy is hungry for more, and the R is renowned value. So what is renowned value? It's value that is talk value. It's the kind of value you don't see coming that competitors can't copy. that really breaks through. And so this is a perfect example of it. And no, it wasn't easy to pull off, right? Because first we wanted to give everyone in America free pizza. Well, can't afford that. That would not work. And so, but we really wanted, coming out of COVID, all the uncertainty, inflation gone crazy, people, their dollars just can't go as far. How do we prove that we're there for you? Because people were dealing with a lot of things, and you're not going to come out and talk about depressing things, but we wanted to show we're in their corner. And so we basically took the BOGO, the age-old coupon that everyone has, and really twisted it with our creative wrapper. It was a BOGOL, buy one, get one later. But essentially, you did need to order from us, but then you get an emergency pizza to use when you need it most in the next 30 days. And we were able to show those stories of emergencies, whether it's like your dinner burned or your teenager, wrecked the car, like all the different problems and things that could come to life. But pizza can help in those moments and make it a little bit better. And really it can. And even at that time, this was when 40 million customers and consumers in America were having their student loan payments be unfrozen, and they were going to have to pay again. We couldn't pay for their student loans, but we said, we'll give 1 million emergency pizzas to that consumer group, and I think that really resonated. We had 2.6 billion earned media impressions, and it was very impactful to the business. And so it was a great learning. Again, this was one that scared our franchisees, I think, scared us a little bit, but we did some testing, and we structured it in a way that it was, talk about value creation, but starting with the consumer, but then value creation for Domino's.
So you're very consumer insights driven. You have a lot of consumer data driving these decisions that you've made. So what are your insights right now? What don't we know about the consumer that you know?
Wow, give away all of our secrets.
Well, at least a few.
Well, I will tell you, you may have seen our tips campaign that we have running, You Tip, We Tip. And so that was a good example of the whole world was talking about tipping and tipping fatigue. And just, this is too much. And it feels like, it's expected every time. And so that was a scary one to lean into, because that could have been taken a lot of different ways, but we went there, again, with renowned value. So if you tip our hardworking delivery drivers $3 or more, we're gonna tip you back $3. And so that was a tension that we leaned into not that long ago. I would say what's on consumers' minds, they are stretched thin. They are fed up with shrinkflation. Every brand, it seems, is giving them less, charging them more, or some version of that. And we know the internet is unforgiving, and the internet will call you out on all of that. So, real value matters, and showing up with empathy as brands and giving value back to the consumer. They want it, they deserve it, and the brands that give them more are gonna continue to win.
Yeah. So I want you to cast your mind back to when you were a summer intern here, which I know was only 5 or 6 years ago. Before you joined Domino's.
15 maybe years ago, yeah. 16.
What did you, it's sort of a two-part question. What did you learn then? And by the way, there are a bunch of interns here right now. Some of them are in the room, some of them are downstairs.
Shout out to the interns.
What did you learn back then that you are still applying now?
Absolutely, so many things. By the way, it was so nostalgic to walk in and see the towers, and just such amazing memories from my time here at P&G. Number one, A.G. Lafley, consumer's boss, always, and you would think that's so obvious to marketers, but you go to other brands and companies, and it's always putting the consumer first, even with your CFO, is fun. But that was a huge one. I would say, the respect and partnership with your partners, which are your agency partners, your cross-functional partners. When you build real relationship and trust and value between both groups, or both individuals and teams, magic happens that way, because you love working together, you have fun, you build a culture, you go for big things. It just can't be understated that you really have to invest the time in that, and it pays in dividends. My first brand manager was Paul Varashu, And he taught me that you need to get speeding tickets, not parking tickets.
That's a
Think
good
about
one.
that one.
Yeah.
And I think some people, especially early in your career, you don't want to make a mistake and you're trying to listen to your boss, and that's not what is needed. In leadership, you need to go, make things happen, lead the thinking, bring your managers along, right? But that's a huge one. And the last one I would say, and this one I learned a lot from Alex Keith, who was our GM of Fabric Care at the time, lead immaculate meetings. What do I mean by that? Leadership team meetings. It's how do you get the most out of those interactions? It's pre-reads. It's a high standard for the conversations you're going to have and what you bring to those meetings and how you focus so that you're respecting people's time. So we have way too many meetings in the world today. Fewer meetings, but really effective meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're unfortunately out of time, but I know that you're going to be sticking around a little bit, so maybe if you have other questions for this P&G alum and Chief Brand Officer of Domino's, Kate, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Thanks.